Hi everyone. What is the 494 Regional Sponsorship Visa and how it is different or similar to the TSS 482 Sponsorship Visa? My name is Erica. I'm one of the co-founders, directors, and registered migration agents here at Bravo. And today I'm going to talk to you about these two visas that create a lot of confusion out there. Both are temporary, meaning they're not permanent visas, and both require sponsorship by a standard business sponsor. That is a company, a business here in Australia that offers you a job that is part of the occupation lists for these visas, and you become sponsored by that business, and you are then allowed to work full-time, but just for that sponsor, just for that business. So the main difference between the two visas is that the 494, the subclass 494 regional employer sponsor provisional visa, as the name says, only positions located in designated regional Australia will be eligible for this visa. So at the moment, designated regional Australia is the whole country with the exception of Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. So if you have a job offer in Adelaide, on the Gold Coast, in Darwin, in the whole Western Australia, in the whole Tasmania, regional Queensland, Newcastle, Wollongong, all these cities and regions are considered regional areas for the purposes of the subclass 494 visa. Now, if your job offer is in Sydney, Melbourne, or Brisbane, then you are not able to apply for subclass 494. You're only going to be able to apply for subclass 482, the TSS visa. Now, if your job offer is in a regional area, you may be able to apply for both the 482 and the 494. There's got to be a consultation with a registered migration professional and you and your employer to decide which one of these visas is better for you and for the business. In some cases, it is cheaper for subclass 494 applications when it comes to the employer side of applications. Sometimes it is better for you to go onto the 494 if you want to apply for permanent residency later. You may not be able to apply for permanent residence via the 482 visa. So we put all of these elements in the same basket, and then we look at your circumstances and your employer's circumstances and advise which one of these options is better for you. Sometimes you are only able to apply for subclass 494. Sometimes you are only able to apply for subclass 482. So starting with the basic requirements for subclass 482. So the name of this visa is Temporary Skills Shortage, or the TSS. And we mostly call this visa the 482 sponsorship visa. So again, you need an Australian business nominating you in a position that is part of the occupation list for this visa and that is in line with your academic background and your work experience. The business must have a genuine need for someone to be working in that position. The role being offered to you needs to be a full-time permanent role and has to attract a minimum salary package in accordance with the minimum salary for sponsorship visas and migration in Australia. Now, not only, we need to show that you have the correct background for the position being offered, but the company, the business offering you that sponsorship needs to be financially viable. There's no requirement for a certain profit to be made by that business, but the business finances have to make sense. In some cases where there's caveats or what we call restrictions, you will need to maybe be offered a higher salary. The company may need to be turning over a minimum amount, and the company may be of a certain type, have a certain number of employees, and so on. But if there are no caveats, no restrictions to the position being offered to you, and there's a list of those that the department publishes, then in that case, there's no minimum turnover required for that business, no higher salary than the minimum salary, no minimum number of employees, and so on, which then takes us to come to the analysis of the business as a whole. Is this business viable? Is this position necessary for the business? does this position make sense within the business, and how the whole picture is going to look. Now, from your perspective, if you're watching us and you're the visa applicant, you need to have the right academic qualifications. Depending on the position, there's a minimum level. Some positions require you to have a minimum bachelor degree, others a diploma, which is like a technological degree in some countries, or even a trade certificate if you are a tradesperson. So if you're a carpenter, you don't need to have a bachelor in carpentry, you just need a certificate 3 or higher in that trade. But regardless of what occupation you are nominating, every applicant for the 482 visa needs to show they have at least 2 years of work experience in a very closely related role to the one being offered. So a lot of people move to Australia on a student visa, and they used to be doctors in their home countries. Then they start working on a restaurant here while they're studying, and they start moving up the ranks, and that restaurant offers them a full-time position as a restaurant manager and offers to sponsor that student to become a full-time worker. If that student hasn't accumulated at least 2 years work experience, we can't use your past experience as a doctor, for example, to get you a visa as a restaurant manager. So you need to have work experience in that same role. Normally, you need to show 2 years full-time experience. If you have worked on a part-time basis, then it's going to be counted in half. So instead of 2 years full-time, you need 4 years part-time. If we're looking at the 494 visa, the company also needs to offer you a position. The position has to be in a certain list. The list here with the 494 visa is different. There are more occupations available because it's a regional visa. And we have to go through the same things. The company needs to be viable. The role being proposed needs to be necessary for the operations of the company, but there are no restrictions, there are no caveats. So sometimes it's better for you and the business that you go with subclass 494 when possible. The position offered, however, needs to be outside of Sydney, outside of Brisbane and Melbourne, because this is a regional visa. It continues to be very similar in many ways, but the requirements for you as the visa applicants are a little bit higher. Not only you have to show you have the minimum work experience again, but instead of 2 years, we're going to have to show 3 years full-time or equivalent part-time work. And yes, you have to have the minimum qualifications required for their role, but you need those qualifications officially assessed by a skills assessment authority. So that varies according to your occupation. If you are applying as an engineer, you need to have your skills assessment done with the Institute of Engineers Australia. If you are in IT, we have the Australian Computer Society, and so on. So the bar is a bit higher for the regional visa. The regional 494 visa, when approved, is valid for 5 years, and it will lead onto a permanent visa application after at least 3 years of you working on that position for any employers. If you change sponsors, you have to change nominations. And as long as you have only lived, worked, and studied in designated regional areas, then you may be able to apply for a permanent visa called Subclass 191 Skilled Regional Visa. Now, if you can only apply for the 482 visa because the position being offered to you is not in a regional area, or for any other reason, you may not have 3 years of work experience, but you have 2 years, or your employer doesn't want to go with the 494 and prefers the 482, you may be able to apply for permanent residence via the subclass 186 permanent employer nomination visa. That visa is not for everyone, only for people who can nominate an occupation in the medium and long-term skills shortage list. So if your occupation is not on that list, it may be one of the reasons why we may suggest that you apply for a 494 instead of a 482. If your goal is to obtain permanent residence, the 494 may be a better option for you. However, it's only for occupations, positions located in designated region Australia, which excludes Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne. So if you have a job offer in any region in Australia, get in touch with us. If that job offer is in your field, in your career, We offer a free assessment. You can have a free chat to one of our registered agents over the phone, where we're going to discuss both visa options and see which one is better. And we can even contact your employer in Australia and discuss their side of the application. As you saw, there's 3 applications: sponsorship, nomination, and visa. And we can assess if this one of these visas is possible for you, and if both are possible, which one is your best option. Don't forget, you cannot apply for any skilled or employer visas without having a minimum level of English. The level on the 494 visa is higher than the 482, but everyone sooner or later will have to show their evidence of English. If you are from the UK, the US, Canada, Ireland, or New Zealand, you don't need to show any evidence of English for the 482 or 494 visa. But if you are not from these countries, you're going to have to sit for an IELTS, PTE, or TOEFL exam to show a minimum level of proficiency. So if you have a job offer, get in touch with us. We'll help you decide if 482 or 494 are better options. Always thinking about leaving a door open for you in case you want permanent residence later. Thank you for watching. Get in touch with us via the link in this bio or via the Linktree direct message in your Instagram. See you later. Bye.